Neela stood quietly in front of the silver door, holding a small cleaning tray in her hands. The long hallway was silent except for the soft hum of the machines above her head. She looked at the blinking panel beside the door, wondering why a looked at the blinking by. Simple nurse like her was sent to this level. This place was forbidden to most staff. Even senior doctors avoided it unless called by the central system. But this morning, her work tablet had flashed a message. Proceed to level -9, room 117. Clean Subject 9's unit. Subject 9. That name sounded cold, like a number, not a living being. Neela had only heard whispers about level -9 stories told in scared voices among the staff. They said it held something ancient, something dangerous. No one really knew what. And those who did never spoke of it again. Taking a deep breath, Neela pressed the code and stepped inside. The room was dark and cold, lit only by a few dim blue lights along the walls. In the center was a large, pod-like bed, covered with clear glass that was now open halfway. Inside lay a figure, tall and silent. Wrapped in tubes, bandages, and a thick gray blanket, Neela walked closer, her heart beating fast. The figure was humanoid, broad chest, strong arms, a human face, even if pale and scarred. His hair was dark, but messy and long. His body didn't move. She looked at the file on her tablet. It simply said, species, human, status, sedated. Last movement, 73 years ago. Neela blinked. 73 years? Was that even possible? She knelt beside the pod, her hand shaking slightly as she pulled out a soft wet cloth. Her job was simple: wipe down the exposed skin to prevent infection, check for any damage on the bandages, then report back. That's it. She touched his shoulder gently with the cloth. His skin was too warm for a body in stasis. She looked at the vitals on the machine. Pulse, stable, temperature, rising slightly. Nothing dangerous but unusual. She wiped his neck, careful not to pull at the tubes, then his arms, which were full of deep scars, old battle wounds maybe. She noticed marks on his wrists like someone had chained him long ago. As she reached for the edge of the blanket to clean lower, she froze. The blanket moved. Neela stared, her heart skipping a beat. Had she imagined it? Maybe the air from the vents? She waited, eyes fixed, breath held. Again, a slow shift, barely visible, but definitely real. The blanket moved from inside, just a little bump, like something twitched beneath it. Her hands trembled as she stepped back. Is he waking up? She whispered, but there was no reply, only the soft machine hum. She looked around. The room had no cameras, no communication panels. Strange, for such a secret facility. There should be monitors everywhere. But here nothing. She glanced back at the man. His face hadn't changed. His eyes were still closed, mouth still. But the blanket had moved, and she knew it wasn't just her mind playing tricks. Neela didn't know what to do. Should she leave? Call someone? But who? The orders clearly said to report after cleaning. And if she left now without finishing, she might lose her job or worse, draw attention. She slowly walked back and knelt beside the man again. Her fingers hovered over the cloth. Then, gently, she continued wiping, this time more carefully, more aware. His chest rose and fell slowly, like someone in deep sleep. But she noticed tiny movements now. Twitching fingers. A small muscle twitched near his jaw. Something was changing. Then something stranger happened as she wiped his right hand. One finger moved slightly and touched her wrist. Her breath caught in her throat. She didn't scream, didn't run. She just froze completely. It was a small touch, soft and weak, but real. She looked at his face again, still no change. But that one touch said everything. He wasn't just alive. He was waking up. Neela stood slowly, backing away until she reached the door. Her heart raced. Her brain screamed to leave, to tell someone, to run and never come back. But her feet didn't move. Instead, she whispered to herself, why now, after all these years? The lights in the room flickered once, then returned to normal. She stared at the human, at Subject 9, and for the first time, She felt something more than fear. She felt curiosity. Who was this man? Why was he kept hidden? And why did he touch her? Neela didn't have the answers yet, but deep in her chest, she knew one thing. This was no ordinary assignment. This was the beginning of something big, something dangerous. And she was already too close to walk away now. Neela didn't sleep. That night, she lay on her small cot in the workers' dormitory, staring at the ceiling, replaying what happened again and again. Her heart still pounded whenever she remembered the slight brush of his finger against her wrist. It had been soft, weak, but real, and no matter how many times she tried to explain it away, the truth stood tall in her mind. Subject 9 had moved. He wasn't supposed to. She was told the human was in permanent sedation, his neural system suppressed, his body frozen just enough to keep organs alive, but not enough to ever wake up. She remembered one of the doctors saying, "It's like freezing time itself." But time was no longer frozen, and somehow, the moment her hand touched him, something had changed. The next morning, Neela returned to the lower levels before anyone else could notice her absence. She made sure her tablet showed a different assignment. She'd swapped IDs with another worker using the trick she learned months ago. She had to see him again to know if it was real or if she was losing her mind. The silver door of room 117 opened with a hiss. The same cold blue-lit room greeted her, and in the center the same strange man under the blanket. But now things were different. The machine above his pod showed a pulsing green light. His vitals were active, not flat like before. Pulse, 48 BPM. Brainwave activity, irregular. Temperature, rising slightly again. Neela slowly stepped closer, staring at the monitor in disbelief. She wasn't trained in advanced medicine, but even she knew these numbers were not from a dead body. He was waking up, or worse, he was already awake. She looked down at him. His face still looked calm, still unmoving. But there was something new now, his breathing. It was shallow but rhythmic. His lips parted slightly as he exhaled. Neela reached out and touched his arm gently. His skin was even warmer than yesterday. He wasn't in stasis anymore. As she leaned closer to inspect the tubes connected to his chest, a strange sound made her jump. A deep, low whisper. She jerked her head back, scanning the room. "Who's there?" she asked in a shaky voice. But no one was there. Then it happened again this time. She heard it clearly, soft and rough like someone speaking from far away. "Neela." Her blood froze. She looked at the man. His eyes were still closed. His mouth didn't move. But she had heard it. He said her name. Neela stepped back quickly, her hands trembling. "How?" she whispered. Her name wasn't on any records in the system, and she had never spoken it aloud in that room. How did he know? She backed up to the door, ready to leave, ready to run. But just then, the lights flickered again, just like they had the day before. Then, something even stranger happened. The main terminal by the wall blinked to life without anyone touching it. Lines of data began scrolling across the screen, but they weren't in the alien language. They were an ancient Terran script, Earth's language. Neela stepped closer to the screen, trying to understand. She had studied some Earth history as a child, but the words here were unfamiliar still. One phrase appeared again and again: reactivation. Protocol initiated. The message repeated 3 times before the screen went black again. Neela gasped. Her heart thudded like a drum inside her chest. She didn't know what this reactivation meant, but it was clear that something hidden had now been triggered. Suddenly, a sharp beep came from the main life support machine. It was a warning tone. She looked at the vitals again. Brain activity had spiked. In that exact moment, the man's eyes shot open. Neela stumbled backward, hitting a tray of tools. They clattered loudly on the floor. The sound echoed through the quiet room like thunder. The man didn't move. He simply stared at her with deep, silver-gray eyes that held war, pain, and something else, recognition. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the rapid beating of Neela's heart. Then his lips moved slowly. "Don't "Be afraid," he whispered. Neela couldn't breathe. He was fully awake, but how? The sedation should have kept him under for centuries, unless someone wanted him to wake up. Neela glanced at the door, afraid someone might burst in any moment. But the room was sealed. The internal systems weren't sending any alerts. As if everything was happening beneath the radar, as if the system itself wanted this to happen. She turned back to the human, trying to speak, but her mouth felt dry. You were asleep." "For decades," she finally said, her voice barely a whisper. He nodded slightly. "Not anymore." His eyes locked on hers with strange calmness. And for a moment, she felt like she wasn't just looking at a man, but at a legend from a forgotten time. He was supposed to be unconscious. He was supposed to be a relic, but now he was awake, and somehow he knew her name. Neela sat on the floor of her small sleeping pod, hugging her knees. Her hands were shaking, and her mind refused to rest. The memory of those silver eyes opening, of that soft whisper, "Don't be afraid," kept repeating like a broken record in her brain. He was supposed to be unconscious, but he spoke, not just random words, but her name, and now she had a problem. No one else knew. No one else could know. If she reported it, they would take her off the assignment, or worse, they might silence her forever. Places like level -9 did not allow leaks, and someone somewhere had gone to a lot of trouble to keep Subject 9 forgotten. But the human was awake, and somehow he had awakened only when she came close. The next day, she pretended to do her regular rounds. She passed by the upper-level med bays, nodding at other nurses, smiling as if nothing had changed. Her tablet showed she was assigned to clean cryo chamber number 12, but she had rerouted the data to room 117. By now, she was walking with purpose down the cold, quiet hallway to level -9 again. The silver door opened silently, as if it knew her. Inside, the human still lay in the pod, but this time, his eyes were closed again. His face was peaceful, almost too calm, as if he had returned to sleep. Neela stepped close, watching him carefully. His breathing was steady. His chest rose and fell slowly beneath the blanket. But she noticed something new. He was mumbling. Soft words escaped his lips, like whispers from a dream. Neela leaned in closer, holding her breath. Earth. Gone. Fire. Scream. Betrayal. The words were broken, lost between heavy breaths, but each one hit Neela like a stone. It was like he was trapped in a memory, reliving something terrible. His hands twitched slightly under the blanket, and his head turned from side to side. Neela felt a strange pull in her chest, a strange ache. He was suffering, even in sleep, and she didn't know how to help him. She placed her hand gently on his forehead. "It's okay," she whispered. "You're safe now." The moment her hand touched him, a shock of something sharp like electricity rushed through her fingers and up her arm. She pulled away, gasping, but then everything around her changed. The lights, the room, even the air. Suddenly, Neela wasn't in the cryo chamber anymore. She was standing in the middle of a battlefield. Fire rained from the sky. Explosions shook the ground. Giant machines flew overhead, shooting beams of light that tore apart buildings. Soldiers in black and silver armor screamed, running toward the enemy in front of her. The same man, the human from the pod, stood holding a massive plasma rifle. Blood covered his arms, his face twisted with fury. His voice roared through the chaos. "Hold the line. For Earth." Neela screamed, but no sound came out. She reached for him, but just as suddenly as it began, the vision vanished. She was back in the cryo room, sweating, breathing hard. Her legs were weak, and she fell to her knees beside the pod. What was that? She whispered to herself. Was it a dream? A hallucination? Or had she just seen his memory? She looked at the human again. His face was still, but a tear rolled down his cheek. It was slow, silent, but very real. Neela touched her own face and realized she was crying too. Something had passed between them. Something deep and powerful. Somehow, when she touched him, she saw his past. She had felt his fear, his rage, his pain, and in that brief moment, she knew one thing for sure. He wasn't just a soldier. He was a survivor of something terrible. She stood slowly, wiping her eyes. Her breathing was still shaky, but her thoughts were clearer now. The doctors, the lab, the locked room. They had kept him hidden for a reason. They didn't want anyone to know what he had seen, or what he could do. But Neela had seen a glimpse of it, and she couldn't unsee it now. She reached for her tablet and checked the logs. Nothing was recorded, just like before. It was as if the room refused to tell the outside world what was happening inside. She looked at the human again. His lips moved once more, whispering something new. Neela, help me. Her hands gripped the edge of the pod. Her heart raced again. How did he know her name? And why was he asking for her? She didn't speak. She couldn't. Instead, she stared at him, and slowly she nodded. I don't know how, she whispered, but I'll try. In that cold, hidden chamber, surrounded by silence and secrets, something had changed. A bond had been formed, and as Neela left the room, her steps quiet and unsure, she knew her life would never be the same again. The human wasn't just speaking in his sleep. He was calling out for help, and she was the only one listening. Neela couldn't sleep again. Not after what she saw. Not after what she felt. She lay curled up on her cot, trembling beneath the thin blanket. Her eyes stared blankly at the wall, but her mind saw something else: fire, blood, explosions. The human shouting orders on a battlefield she never knew. But it didn't feel like a dream. It had felt real, too real. As if those memories weren't just his. They were now partly hers too. That terrified her more than anything. She had never fought in a war, never even touched a weapon. She had lived a quiet life in a government care shelter. Trained to be a medical assistant, taught to obey, taught to follow rules. Her life was clean, simple, and small. But the moment she touched him, everything changed. The next morning, her hands still shook as she held her cleaning tray. Her eyes were tired, and her chest felt heavy. But something inside her refused to stay away. She needed answers, even if the truth would break her. Back at level -9, room 117 was quiet. The silver door opened with the same silent hiss, and once again, she stepped into the cold chamber. The human was still lying there, the blanket now slightly wrinkled, his face calm, but his skin warmer than ever. The machine's readings showed high brain activity, fast eye movement, signs of vivid dreaming. Neela stepped forward slowly. Her heart pounded in her ears. She reached out again, hesitating for only a moment before placing her fingers gently on his forehead. And once again, it happened. The cryo chamber vanished, in its place another memory. She stood in a metallic hallway, sirens blaring above her. Humans in black armor were shouting, running past her. The walls were shaking from outside impacts. A young girl, no older than 12, was crying in the corner, covering her ears. Neela turned and saw the same human, older now, a heavy scar across his cheek bending down to the child. "Don't be afraid," he whispered, handing her a piece of candy. "We'll get you out of here." Suddenly, the hallway exploded in light. Something massive tore through the wall. Neela screamed, and she was back in the chamber. Gasping for breath, she dropped to her knees. Her body was soaked in sweat. Her head spun like she'd been underwater too long. These weren't simple visions anymore. They were memories, his memories being passed to her like messages through touch. She looked at the man, his face still peaceful. But his eyes moved rapidly beneath the lids. He was still dreaming. But now, so was she. She got up shakily and walked to the side terminal. Her fingers hovered over the screen, then moved quickly, searching for access logs, medical records, hidden files. Most of the data was locked, redacted, or encrypted. But one file blinked open, an old maintenance log. Subject 9. Captured in year 2742, after Terran resistance collapse status. Genetically modified human combatant. Do not engage directly. Subject Demonstrates psychic synchronization when in prolonged contact with specific sentient beings. Requires sedation and memory isolation to prevent system breach. Neela's hand froze. Psychic synchronization. So it wasn't just her imagination. He'd been designed to connect mentally. He wasn't just a soldier, he was a living weapon. And she, by touching him, had triggered that forgotten system she leaned back against the wall, breathing hard. Her entire body buzzed with something she couldn't explain: fear, guilt, awe, all mixed together. Suddenly, she heard the soft sound of his voice again. Neela. She turned. His lips hadn't moved, but she heard it clearly, this time inside her head. "I see you," the voice said. "You're not like the others." Her breath caught in her throat. "Are you awake?" She whispered. No answer, just the feeling of warmth in her mind, like a gentle pulse pressing against her thoughts. Neela stepped closer. "Why me?" she asked. "Why do you see me?" The voice returned, soft but firm. "You reached out. Not with fear, but with care." Tears welled in Neela's eyes. Her knees gave out again, and she dropped beside the pod. "I don't even know your name," she said quietly. There was silence for a moment, then a single word came through her. "Mind, Commander Rain." She repeated it softly. Rain. The name felt strong, sharp, but also sad. She reached out once more, not to clean, not to inspect, but to hold his hand. His fingers twitched beneath hers, just barely, and in that tiny movement, Neela knew he was no longer just a forgotten soldier. He was a broken warrior trying to return from the edge of oblivion, and she was the only one he trusted to guide him back. From this moment on, she couldn't walk away. His memories were now inside her, and so was his pain. She didn't know how deep it would go, or how much it would cost her, but Neela knew this was her path now. She had touched something powerful, ancient, and dangerous, and it had touched her back. Neela had been counting his breaths. One rise of the chest, one fall, one rise. One fall smooth, steady, alive. She sat quietly beside the pod, her hand gently resting on his. She hadn't reported anything to the upper staff. No one knew she was still coming here, not even the other nurses in her dorm. But something inside her had changed, something unspoken, a bond that no one else would understand. And now, it was about to get even more real. The lights flickered again, just like before, but this time, they didn't return fully. The cold blue glow dimmed and shifted to a deep orange hue. It almost looked like a warning. Neela stood up, checking the vitals on the machine. Her breath caught when she saw the numbers. Pulse, 89 BPM brainwave activity. Maximum system alert. Sedation protocol. Failed. She whispered. The machine beeped rapidly, something it had never done before. His body started to move slowly, fingers twitching, shoulders shifting, like someone stretching after a long sleep. Neela backed up 2 steps, heart pounding in her chest. She didn't know whether to run or stay. Then, the final thing happened. He opened his eyes. Not slowly like before, not with sleep, but with clarity, with power, with sharp awareness. His silver-gray eyes locked straight onto hers, like a spear going through her chest. Neela's mouth fell open, but no sound came out. She froze, unable to think. The man Commander Rain slowly sat up, removing the breathing tube from his nose without effort. His voice was low, cracked, but still clear. "Where am I?" he asked. Neela tried to speak, but her throat was dry. "You're in a medical chamber," she managed to whisper. "You were in stasis." His eyes scanned the room quickly. He seemed to take in everything. The monitors, the lights, the machines, and then returned his gaze to her. "How long?" he asked. Neela swallowed hard. 73 years. He didn't flinch, didn't even blink. He simply nodded once, as if he already expected that answer. The door suddenly beeped. A red light blinked on the console. Unauthorized movement detected, said the cold voice of the security system. Neela turned in panic. No, not now," she whispered. She rushed to the console and tapped in her override code. trying to silence the alert, but it was too late. In moments, the hallway lights outside turned red. Boots echoed in the distance, heavy steps of security guards rushing down. Rain stood up fully now, stepping out of the pod with surprising strength. His legs shook slightly, but his posture was straight, like a man who refused to fall. Neela turned to him, breathless. "You have to hide," she said. "They'll think you're dangerous." He looked at her calmly. "They're not wrong." Before she could ask what he meant, the door hissed open. 3 alien guards rushed in, weapons raised. "Subject 9 is awake." One shouted, "Stand down." Rain didn't move, but something shifted in the air. An invisible pressure filled the room. The guards looked nervous, one of them hesitating before aiming again. "Drop your weapon," said Rain, his voice deeper now, stronger. The lights above flickered once more. And then something impossible happened. Every weapon in the room short-circuited, sparks flying from the barrels. The guards screamed and fell back, dropping their rifles. Neela covered her mouth, stunned. What was that? Rain looked at his own hands as if testing them, then muttered, "Still works." He turned to Neela. "You need to leave with me." She blinked, shocked. "Me?" "You touched me," he said. "I saw your thoughts, your fear, your kindness." Neela stepped back, confused. "But I'm no one. I'm just—" "You're the reason I woke up," Rain interrupted gently. "That makes you part of this." Now, sirens began to blare outside. More guards were coming. She could hear shouting. Metal doors locking, orders being shouted over the intercom. "You know the layout of this place," Rain said calmly. "Can you get us out?" Neela hesitated for one long second, heart racing, breath shallow. She didn't know who he really was, or what he could do, but she knew this. If they caught him again, they would put him back in the pod, maybe destroy him this time, and if they caught her with him, she would vanish too. She looked into his eyes, the same eyes that had seen fire, war, betrayal, and still chose to wake up with kindness. "Yes," she whispered. "I'll get us out." He nodded once, not as a commander giving orders, but as someone placing trust in her. Neela reached for the side door panel, punched in a secret access code, and the wall shifted open to reveal a dark maintenance shaft. "This way," she said, grabbing a flashlight. "Follow me." Rain stepped in behind her without a sound, and as they disappeared into the shadows, the last thing she saw before the wall closed behind them was the blinking red light of the security system, too late to catch them. He was awake now, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same again. Neela's lungs burned as she crawled through the narrow maintenance shaft. Her hands were scraped, her knees sore, but she didn't stop. Not once did she look back, because she could hear him, Rain, moving behind her, steady and silent, like a shadow. The emergency lights flickered above them, casting strange shapes on the curved metal walls. Below them, alarms echoed through the base. Security forces shouting, boots running. Neela had never broken a rule in her entire life, and now she was helping the galaxy's most dangerous man escape. She had so many questions, but now was not the time. At the end of the shaft, she reached a service door and entered another override code. The door opened slowly, revealing a forgotten hallway used for wastebot traffic. The lights were dim. The air smelled of old oil and dust, but no guards patrolled this part. Rain climbed out behind her, standing upright now. His movements were smoother, stronger. His body was still recovering, but fast. "Where are we?" he asked quietly. Neela looked around, wiping sweat from her forehead. "Back route to the supply hangar," she said. "But it's not connected to the main system, so they won't find us here right away." Rain nodded. "Smart." They walked together, their steps echoing softly in the silence. Neela finally found the courage to speak. "You said you saw my thoughts," she said. "Does that mean you know everything?" Rain didn't answer at first. His eyes were distant, like he was watching something long ago. "I see what you allow me to see," he said at last. "And I felt your fear, your confusion, but also your kindness." Neela looked down at the floor. unsure how to respond. I didn't mean to connect with you, she said. It just happened when I touched you. It wasn't just you, Rain said, stopping for a moment. It was the way you touched me, like I mattered. Like I wasn't just some experiment. Neela's eyes widened. You knew you were being used? Rain turned toward her slowly, his face calm but tired. I wasn't sleeping. Not the way they thought, he said. I was locked inside my own mind awake, but dreaming, trapped in loops of war and pain. Neela felt her stomach twist. That's why you were mumbling, whispering, she said. I thought they were just dreams. They were memories, Rain replied. Memories they tried to bury. They walked a bit farther until they reached an old supply room filled with crates and backup generator cells. Neela closed the door behind them and turned on a small utility light. For a moment, they just sat on the floor, both breathing heavily. Neela looked at him closely now, really studying him. His face was scarred, but not frightening. There was sadness in his eyes, deep and silent, like someone who had lost too much for too long. I read something in your file, she whispered. It said you were part of the Terran Final Legion. Rain gave a small nod. We were the last line of Earth's defense, he said, created to survive when no one else could. Neela leaned forward. But Earth is gone now. He looked at her with eyes that had seen the end. I know, he said softly. And it wasn't just the war that destroyed it. Neela frowned. What do you mean? He took a deep breath. There was betrayal from the inside. He said, allies turned enemies, commands we never understood, and when it was over, I wasn't rescued, I was taken. You mean by my people? Neela asked, heart sinking. Rain nodded. They didn't see a man, they saw a weapon, a prize. They wiped records, erased my history, and locked me away. Neela's hands trembled slightly. She didn't know what to say. She had always believed her government told the truth, but now standing in front of living proof, she wasn't sure of anything. Rain's voice softened. You didn't do it, Neela, he said. You weren't even born then. I still feel responsible, she said quietly. I was trained to follow orders, never question them. Rain looked at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. It's what they wanted for people like you to obey without wondering why. Neela looked up, her voice stronger now. But I want to understand now. I want to help. Rain stood, his posture straight. Then you need to see the truth. He stepped forward, gently placing his hand on her temple. This time, I'll show you what they really did. Neela gasped as her mind filled with light and sound. She saw a secret meeting in an alien council chamber, talking about harvesting Terran DNA. She saw her own superiors discussing which parts of Rain's mind to erase, what memories to extract, what skills to replicate. She saw herself as a child being assigned to a training center built with knowledge taken from his memories. It was all connected. When Rain removed his hand, she collapsed to her knees. Trembling, they lied to all of us, she whispered. Rain helped her up gently. Now you know why they fear me, he said. Not because of what I did, but because of what I remember. Neela's eyes burned with fresh determination. Then we can't run anymore, she said. We have to show the galaxy the truth. Rain nodded slowly. And we will, he said. But first, we survive. Outside the room, a faint metal clank echoed in the hallway. Someone was coming. Neela and Rain stood frozen, both listening to the sound of metal footsteps echoing in the hallway outside the old supply room. It was slow, deliberate, one step at a time. Neela's pulse quickened. She looked toward the wall panel, but it was too late to run. Rain moved quickly but quietly, pulling her behind a stack of storage crates. His hand rested gently on her arm, not out of fear but protection. They waited in silence as the door creaked open. A tall alien figure entered, dressed in a black, armored uniform. A scanner device blinked in his hand. Red lights flashing across the room. Rain whispered into Neela's ear. Don't move. The guard stepped forward, pausing at the old power cell rack. He seemed unsure, like something was wrong, but not enough to raise alarm yet. Neela held her breath, praying the scanner wouldn't pick up the human heat signature still radiating from Rain's recovering body. Then, just as suddenly as he came, the guard turned and walked out. The door hissed shut behind him. They waited 10 more seconds, then Rain slowly stood up, offering a hand to help Neela rise. "You saved me back there," she said softly, her voice shaking. "If he had found us." "But he didn't," Rain replied. "You've done more for me than anyone ever has." They exited the supply room and made their way through another hidden path Neela knew, one only used by sanitation drones. As they crawled through the narrow tunnel, Rain spoke again. "I've been thinking," he said, "about what comes next." Neela turned her head to look at him. "What do you mean?" "I can't stay hidden forever," Rain answered. "Sooner or later, they'll find me again. Unless I do something about it." Neela nodded slowly. "You want to go public?" "Yes," Rain said firmly. "But not just appear on some screen. I want to show them the memories. The real ones, the ones they buried." Neela bit her lip. "But they'll call you a liar, a terrorist. They'll erase you again." "Not if I'm not alone," Rain said, looking at her. "Not if someone like you stands with me." Neela stopped crawling, her hands clenched into fists. Her whole life she had been small, invisible, following rules written by others. But now someone trusted her. Someone believed she could help change the future. "Yes," she whispered. "I'll stand with you." They reached the exit of the tunnel, which opened into a small outdoor service yard. Moonlight bathed the metal walls in pale blue light. And beyond the high fences, a wide desert stretched across the night horizon. A single transport vehicle stood parked near the fence, an old maintenance rover with faded paint. Neela smiled. "I can hotwire that." Rain looked at her, a hint of surprise in his eyes. "Really?" She grinned. "You're not the only one with hidden talents." Moments later, the rover came to life with a soft purr. They both climbed in, and Neela drove through the dusty side path she had used only once during emergency training. As the vehicle moved into the night, Rain looked out at the stars. "I wonder if Earth's ashes are still floating up there," he said quietly. Neela didn't know how to answer, so instead, she placed a hand gently on his. "Maybe," she said. "But that doesn't mean the story is over." He turned to look at her. "Do you really think people will listen?" "They listened to the wrong voices for so long," she said. "Maybe it's time they hear the right ones." They traveled across the quiet desert until the facility was nothing but a distant glow. In the silence, something began to grow between them, not just trust, but connection. For Rain, it was strange and unfamiliar, a kind of peace he hadn't felt since before the war. For Neela, it was the first time someone saw her as more than a tool, more than a low-level worker. And when the sun finally rose behind the hills, painting the sky in soft orange and gold, Rain turned to her and said something he had never said to anyone. "Thank you," Neela smiled. "You're welcome." They reached an abandoned outpost at the edge of the desert, long forgotten, with broken towers and rusted gates. But the signal booster inside still worked, and Neela used it to patch into an old civilian channel. Rain uploaded the recovered memory files, unaltered, raw. A message played alongside it, a simple one, spoken in his voice. "I am Commander Rain of the Terran Final Legion. This is my truth. Not for revenge, not for glory, but because you deserve to know what was taken from all of us." Neela hit send, and the signal went live. Somewhere across the stars, someone would hear it. Someone would believe. And in that small outpost, standing in the dust and rising sunlight, two people, one human, one alien, stood side by side. Not fugitives, not criminals, but survivors of a buried truth, ready to start a new future together.